morning.
Morning.
So this morning we are going to see, we've been studying about Joseph. The story still goes on about Joseph, but it kind of turns over to Joseph's family, to Joseph's brothers. Remember, they are back in the land of Canaan, and Joseph is in Egypt. And while we might want to say that Joseph's brothers were bad, and they were, and here is a perfect example of the sovereignty of God and human responsibility put together. Okay, this story, the story of Joseph, is a perfect example of the sovereignty of God and the responsibility of people. Okay, they are responsible for everything they did wrong, but at the same time, they did exactly what God decreed that they would do. They did exactly what God planned for it to happen. Does that make sense? But they are guilty still for the sin that they committed. So, here we have Joseph's brothers sent to Egypt. And I think it's going to be interesting to see here how Joseph's brothers were, they sold him into slavery. He had dreams, if you remember. He had dreams that literally said that his father and his brothers would bow down to him at one time. And so I believe we're going to, and while they bow down in ignorance of who he is now, okay, the time will come when he will bow down, when they will bow down to him, even though they know who he is, okay, and they will be afraid of him. And so they sold him into slavery. And God, we will see the sovereignty of God, the hand of God at work in this story. All right. So we're ready for Joseph's brothers sent to Egypt is the title of the story. It is Genesis chapter 42. We're getting close to the end of Genesis. Genesis is, I think there's 50 chapters in Genesis, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Waylon?
Yeah. So
we'll be getting close to done by the end of this week in Genesis, and we'll be going on over into Exodus. So it says, in Genesis chapter 42, verse 1 says, "Now Jacob saw that there was grain in Egypt." So the story changes scenes, okay? Last time we were there, Joseph had become the ruler of Egypt, where he was imprisoned, and where he went there as a slave, was sold into slavery, and was there as a slave, was there in prison because of false accusations. And now the story has turned back to Jacob, who is back in the land of Canaan, and who is literally, he has, it's okay, just go get her.
Want me to pause it?
No, that's fine. So anyway, now Jacob saw that there was grain in Egypt. And Jacob said to his sons, Why are you staring at one another? So in other words, he's like, why are you sitting here not doing anything, He said, Behold, I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us from that place, so that we may live and not die. Then ten brothers of Joseph went down to buy grain from Egypt. So there were 12 brothers total, right? So one of them stayed at home. Okay? They didn't, because Joseph's not there, so there's still 11 living at home, and 10 of them went to buy grain, so one of them stayed at home. Okay? So it says 10 brothers of Joseph went down to buy grain from Egypt. But Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he said, I am afraid that harm may befall him. So now, who was Benjamin?
The little brother?
Yeah, it was, go ahead.
The brother that adopted.
No, they didn't adopt him. Benjamin was the youngest brother, okay, of all the brothers. And who was his mother?
Wasn't it Rachel?
Rachel, yes, yeah. It was Rachel. Rachel was mother of Joseph and Benjamin, okay? And so, he says, So the sons of Israel came to buy grain among those who were coming, for the famine was in the land of Canaan also. Okay? So it wasn't just in Egypt. It was the famine was, and do you see the hand of God here? The sovereign decree, and even then, all this is happening way back. Remember when we read the story where Abraham took the animals and he cut them in half, and God put him in a trance, and God came down and passed between the animal halves, and he said that your descendants, your children, will spend 430 years. I think he said 400 years, but it ended up being 430 years in Egypt, in bondage. Okay, literally. Although Joseph's brothers are responsible for what they did, human responsibility, okay, know that. Even though they are responsible for what they did, you can still be very sure of this, okay, that God's hand was still in there. God was still, nothing happened outside of his control. He completely decreed it, completely controlled it, and he sent Joseph ahead of them, and Joseph will even point that out later on in the story, okay? And sent Joseph there, and what they did wrong is on them. It will be held against them, and yet God still decreed it. That's called human responsibility and the sovereignty of God side by side, okay? And so it says, now in verse 6 it says, now Joseph was the ruler over the land. He was the one who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed down to him with their faces to the ground. Do you remember the dream he had? The dream he had that they all bowed down to him. And they became angry. They were mad at him. That's why they sold him. They said, what does this dreamer want now? You know, here comes that dreamer. I mean, well, wait a minute. Then it says, when Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them. He knew who they were immediately. Although why did he recognize? I mean, he was only 17 when they sold him into slavery, if I remember right. So if he was only 17, by now he has done a lot of changing. He has developed into a man and has, is dressed like the Egyptians. His ruler is they probably did not recognize him. They probably thought they would never ever see Joseph again, and sure didn't think that Joseph would ever be anything more than a slave somewhere, mistreated and abused and whatnot. But here again we see the sovereignty of God, who controls all things, who works all things after the counsel of his will. Does that make sense? When Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he disguised himself to them and spoke to them harshly. And he said to them, where have you come from? And they said, from the land of Canaan to buy food. But Joseph had recognized his brothers, although they did not recognize him. Joseph remembered the dreams which he had had about them, and said to them, you are spies. You have come to look at the undefended parts of our land. Then they said to him, no, my lord, but your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We are honest men. Yeah, they're honest men, all right. We are honest men. Your servants are not spies. They are so honest that they sold their brother into slavery, dipped his coat in animal blood, and took it home and told their dad that their brother was killed by a wild animal. Wow, that's honest right there. Yet he said to them, no, but you have come to look at the undefended parts of our land. But they said, your servants are 12 brothers in all, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is with our father today, and one is no longer alive. Joseph said to them, It is as I said to you, you are spies. But by this you will be tested. By the life of Pharaoh you shall not go from this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you that he may get your brother while you remain confined, that your words may be tested, whether there is truth in you. But if not, by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies. So he put them all together in prison for 3 days. So they got to get a little taste, just a little taste of what he got to have in prison. Now there in prison and under his control, under his rule, he could have had them all killed right there. Every one of them. He had the power to, but yet by the sovereignty of God, think about it. Most of us probably would have had him killed. But God worked in his heart. His still, because of God, he still did what God decreed would happen. Now Joseph said to them on the 3rd day, do this and live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers be confined in your prison. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers be confined in your prison. But as for the rest of you, go carry grain for the famine of your households, and bring your youngest brother to me, so your words may be verified, and you will not die. They did so. Then they said to one another, truly we are guilty concerning our brother, because we saw the distress of his soul when he pleaded with us, yet we would not listen. Therefore, this distress has come upon us. Reuben answered them, saying, did I not tell you, do not sin against the boy, and you would not listen? Now comes the reckoning for his blood. They did not know, however, that Joseph understood, for there was an interpreter between them. So Joseph was listening to all that they said. They understood it. And they had an interpreter who, so they didn't know that Joseph knew everything they were saying. He turned away from them and wept. But when he returned to them, he spoke to them. He took Simeon from them and bound him before their eyes. Then Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain, and to restore every man's money in his sack, and to give them provisions for the journey. And thus it was done for them. So they loaded their donkeys with their grain, and departed from there. As one of them opened his sack to give his donkey fodder at the lodging place, he saw his money, and behold, it was in the mouth of his sack. Then he said to his brothers, my money has been returned, and behold, it is even in my sack. And their hearts sank, and they turned, trembling to one another, saying, what is this that God has done to us? When they came to their father, Jacob, in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them, saying, the man, the Lord of the land, spoke harshly with us, and took us for spies of the country. But we said to him, we are honest men. We are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no longer alive, and the youngest is with our father today in the land of Canaan. The man, the Lord of the land, said to us, by this I will know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me, and take grain for the famine of your households, and go. But bring your youngest brother to me, that I may know that you are not spies, but honest men. I will give your brother to you, and may trade in the land. Now it came about, as they were emptying their sacks, that behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when they and their father saw their bundles of money, they were dismayed. Their father Jacob said to them, you have You have bereaved me of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more, and you would take Benjamin. All these things are against me. Then Reuben spoke to his father, saying, You may put my 2 sons to death, if I do not bring them back to you. Put him, talking about Benjamin, in my care, and I will return him to you. But Jacob said, My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he alone is left. If harm should befall him on the journey you are taking, then you will bring my gray hair down to Sheol in sorrow. So, tomorrow we will learn about them going. I mean, they are going to run out of food. They're going to have no choice to go back. And although Jacob doesn't want it to happen, they're going to have to go back. Okay. And we are rapidly coming to the end of this book. We just have a few more, 5 or 6 more days, and we'll finally be at the end of Genesis. It's been a long time, I know, going through it. But do you see the sovereignty of God here? Do you see God at work? Joseph will actually point out to them after their father dies. The brothers come to him scared of him because now their father's not there to protect them. They're convinced that Joseph will kill them. Joseph tells them, he says, don't be afraid. You meant it for bad, but God meant it for good. He sees it. He knows that it was all God's sovereign plan. Does that make sense? That God planned it out. Although it will be held against them, it is still in God's sovereign plan. Okay? So it is, there is always a double truth. MacArthur has a sermon on YouTube about the twin responsibilities, or the twin truths, I should say. And that is the sovereignty of God and the responsibility of man. A lot of people like to call that the free will of man. But if man has free will, then he has the freedom to go up on the roof and jump off and try to fly, right? But he doesn't have the ability to fly because that goes against his nature. His will is enslaved to his nature, okay? He can't do something that goes against his will. Why? Because he is created in the image of God, and God can't do something that goes against his nature. Does that make sense? The Bible says that God cannot lie. Well, why can't he lie? Because it goes against his nature. Therefore, we, made in his image, are the same way. We are enslaved to our nature, and we cannot go against our nature. Okay? We have the freedom to, but we don't have the ability to go against our nature. That's the same way with God. God is free to lie if he wants to, but he can't go against his nature.
If we have true free will, then we're free to do anything we want. Meaning our nature can't hold us from anything.
Right, exactly.
We're free to be holy, we're free to be sinful, we're free to do anything that we want to do.
Including fly, right? But our nature does not allow us to be that. One thing I can promise you is your nature doesn't allow you to be holy. The only way you can ever be holy is if God makes you holy, okay? And the reason we don't know these things is because we don't spend enough time studying this word, okay? We are too busy with other things in life. So, anyway, any other thoughts? That was a good thought, Wade. Anyone else? All right, so let's close in prayer and we'll get our day started. Father God, thank you for this day, Lord. I thank you for the word that you gave us. I thank you for all that you do, for your love, for your Son who died for us. Lord, I pray, Father, that you would open our hearts and our minds, that we would truly come to know you, that we would see the twin truth of your sovereignty and our responsibility, that you would, Father, you would help us, that we would truly know your word. I pray, Father, that you command what you will, that you will what you command. Father, that you command us to love you. that you command us to know you, to seek you. Father, to seek you first and to seek your righteousness first. But the truth is, Lord, you command it unless you will it. And we have no ability. I pray that you command it, but that you also will it. That we would know you. That we would long to know you. That we would be broken for the lost around us. That we would truly go out and reach the lost around us the way you have called us to. Father, I pray that you touch someone's heart with your word today, this video. Lord, just go with us today. That whatever we say and do would bring glory to you and not to ourselves. Father, just forgive us for what we've done. In